What is up, Life Fam? Welcome to another video. My name is David, your spiritual life coach, here to help you through your spiritual awakening. Now, as a spiritual life coach, I have been blessed with an opportunity to look at the spiritual awakening process through many different eyes, giving me many different perspectives of the spiritual awakening process. And I would say maybe one of the benefits of having a bit of an over-analytical mind is I've been able to piece together the one overarching theme that keeps most people from stepping into 5D consciousness and making that new 5D Earth a reality for them. Can you guess what it is? We'll find out if you're right. We're going to talk about it right now. Let's go. Before we get into the video, if you are interested in working with me as your spiritual life coach, one-on-one through Zoom, check the description below. I've got a couple of different options for you. Now, what is the one thing that may be keeping you from 5D consciousness? In my opinion, I believe it to be fear. Now, before you just assume that this is just going to be another one of those live fearlessly videos that we see all over YouTube, I want to attempt to reprogram your belief system about what you fear so that it does become easier for you to step into 5D consciousness. Many of us in the spiritual community that have had a Kundalini awakening can absolutely attest to the fact that love is the highest governing frequency in the universe. In a Kundalini awakening, you are just overwhelmed with a warm waterfall of absolute love that envelops you. You instantly understand that you are loved beyond your comprehension. You are protected, you are guided, you can never fail, and you are eternal. Now, I say that to illustrate in your mind just how high frequency and soul liberating love is, so that we can set a benchmark for you to understand what love is not. So I do that to say fear is the opposite of love. Now, many people would immediately say hate is the opposite of love, but actually hate is a subcategory of fear because hate is birthed from fear. If fear is the opposite of love, then it would make sense to say that fear is the gatekeeper or key bearer to love. You have to conquer what you fear most to unlock the doors to the realities of higher consciousness where love is the dominant frequency, i.e. 5D consciousness, 5D Earth. So that would mean that fear is not to be feared at all, but instead to be admired and revered as a teacher and a gatekeeper to a life of spiritual freedom. This would lead us to believe that what you fear most is not in your life and your thoughts by chance. Do you really think it's a coincidence that what you fear most holds your greatest life lesson? The learning and implementation of which will allow you to live life free and on your own terms. I would suggest that what you fear most is preordained and not coincidence. And humor me for a second when I suggest that you yourself chose what you would fear the most when you decided upon what you wanted to learn and experience in this particular incarnation before you decided to incarnate. For example, let's say that you wanted to live through, experience, and learn what love actually is. So you chose parents that would allow you to experience what love is not. Now, I know that that is going to cut deep and ruffle some feathers of people that have not healed that childhood trauma yet. But for the ones that have healed that childhood trauma, they can probably look back and say, yeah, that makes sense. So if most of us agree that what you fear most came from childhood trauma that you've carried into adulthood, then in my opinion, who your parents are is not an accident. So wouldn't it make sense to say that while you're in this physical reality, if you wanted to get back to your highest source form of absolute love, you would have to pass through the gauntlet of what you fear most, or the nemesis of love. Ooh, I like that one, Light Fam. The nemesis of love. Yes, you have to defeat the nemesis of love. And love is really just higher consciousness. So let's say you have to defeat the nemesis of higher consciousness to step into higher consciousness and live from a 5D perspective. So what does conquer the fear really mean? It means debunking the fear. It means leaning into the fear head on and discerning whether it's an actual legitimate fear in the first place. Most of what we fear are irrational fears birthed from childhood trauma, as I mentioned earlier. Now, that doesn't discount the fact that it's a legitimate fear for you, but if you can at least identify the source of the fear, then you can eventually come around to realizing that the fruition of that fear in your physical life actually coming true is a very small possibility, and that kind of helps to alleviate that fear somewhat. And this is where shadow work is worth its weight in gold. I have 2 shadow work videos that I will link in the description below, so you can check that out. But most psychologists agree that, most of what we fear is just all in our imaginations anyway. And the actual fruition of those fears coming to reality and being life-changing only happen, they estimate, a maximum of 10% at most. Know that when you are living in fear, you are at the highest point of vibrational dissonance from 5D consciousness. Now, I'm not talking about life-threatening fear where you need to escape a burning building or act fast to escape physical harm. No, I'm talking about that old repeating fear that keeps showing up in all of your relationships, including the relationship with yourself, or that old repeating fear that keeps you job hopping, for example. That repeating fear is going to wear a different mask in each scenario, but the overarching theme is always going to be the same. At its core, it may be a self-love issue, or a self-worth issue, or a scarcity mindset around money issue. Whatever that repeating theme is, the conquering of that fear will unlock your shackles that are tethering you from living your life fearlessly on your own terms. So how do we conquer what we fear most so that we can step into 5D consciousness and make 5D Earth a physical reality for ourselves? We have to write a new program by physically doing the opposite of the old program. So one of my all-time favorite spiritual teachers is Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dr. Joe Dispenza says that every time that you take physical actions in accordance with the old program, or that old identity where you're fearful of not being enough, or you're fearful of not having enough money, those actions in accordance with that old programming strengthens and proliferates that internal belief system, further embedding it into our subconscious and strengthening those synapses, those connections in our brains of that old program, making that old program feel familiar and comforting and safe. He talks about when his patients, just want to stay where they are and they don't want to get outside of their comfort zone, they don't want to change, they'll say, "Oh, this is just who I am. I've been this way all my life. This just feels right." And he's like, "No, it doesn't feel right. It feels familiar," because you've been doing it all your life. Don't mistake right for familiar. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm going to link Dr. Joe Dispenza's channel in my description below. If you are serious about birthing a new identity in your life, I highly suggest you read his books and watch his content for sure. So this is how we conquer what we fear most and step into 5D consciousness, step into that new 5D Earth by taking the physical actions in direct opposition to the old program. Maybe that means physically acting out, loving yourself more. Maybe it means physically acting out, loving your fellow human more. Maybe it means physically acting out, being more generous. Maybe it means physically acting out, letting go of control more frequently. Whatever your specific fear is, acting in direct opposition, taking those actions opposite of that fear, writes the new program. Neuroplasticity is a thing. So the more that you act in accordance with that new programming, new synapses are built and strengthened. And like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, the circuits that fire together, wire together, I believe is what he says. But essentially, you're building that new program, and the old synapses, the old connections to the old program in your brain begin to break. That connection gets severed, and then that old program, that old identity gets deleted like malware off of your mental computer. Now, question of the day. What action are you going to take that is in direct opposition of your biggest fear? Ooh, like fam, let's hear about it in the comments below. That's another one, guys. If you do have a question for me, please add me over on Instagram _Lightways. I do try my best to answer a lot of the questions over there. I also may make a video out of your question. Let's see, what else? Share this video with anyone that you feel could use it on their spiritual journey. If you are interested in a spiritual life coach, check the description below. I've got a couple of different options where we can work together one-on-one through Zoom. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You know how we do it. Light, love, and abundance to all that are watching and to all you love. Peace, guys.